Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We will start in a couple of minutes. Good morning, everyone. It's 9 a.m. I'll just give folks a minute or two to log in and get settled, and then we'll get started. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Moj Kamas. I will walk you through our proposed changes to the cost assessment model long-term treatment with a couple of my colleagues. I see that we have a small group today, but that's okay. We will get more time for Q&A sessions. Let me turn my camera on, and then hopefully I can walk you through what we have today. Okay. Just some meeting logistics before we get started. I would like to share with you our water board's mission and just remind everybody of that. So our water board's mission statement is to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of California's water resources and drinking water for the protection of the environment, public health, and all beneficial uses, also to ensure proper water resource allocation and efficient use for the benefit of present and future generations. How to participate. So we have folks watching us through the live webcam. For these folks, I really encourage you to, if you have any question or comment, to please submit your comment through our Safer web inbox. We have staff watching the inbox and they can raise your question on behalf of you. For Zoom folks, please, you can use a Q&A session. You can also upvote a question if you're interested. During the Q&A session, you can also raise your hand and also, be verbal and provide us with any feedback. We have a very dense agenda today, and me and two of my colleagues will be walking you through it. It's a very complicated subject, so we really appreciate your patience and feedback in advance. We will start by walking you through the summary of the proposed changes, then we will move along to talk about the model treatment changes, and then talk about the criteria and then any updated criteria that we're making, and then move to talk about the important part about updating the unit cost assumptions, and then wrapping it up with next steps. So just to give you some background, but before I dive into the background, I would like to launch the first poll question just to get a sense of who's with us in the room today. Okay, I'm trying to launch the poll. Okay, can you confirm if you see it? Okay, I'll just give a few seconds and then end the poll. Okay, sharing results now. Okay, so looks like we have around 61 of our attendees today that are not, familiar or did not participate in any past webinars. Apologies, I should have read the poll question, but I was wondering did you participate in any past webinars about the cost model? And looks like 61% did not, which is totally fine. You are in the right place. And looks like we have folks that are coming back, 39%. Welcome back. Okay. So the second poll question. Okay. So the second poll question, sorry, I'm trying to launch it here. So the second poll question, have you read the white paper, proposed changes for the model long treatment white paper? I mean, we don't anticipate, honestly, that you had the time to, read the white paper. I mean, we just submitted the white paper on our webpage, but we want to get a sense if you had the chance to skim it or if you are planning to do so. I'll give folks a few seconds and then I will end the poll. I'll end it in a couple more seconds. Sharing results. Okay, so that's interesting. Looks like 27% of the folks had the time to skim it, which is awesome. 67 of the people did not have the time to go through it, which is totally fine. We will give you a little bit of a journey in our presentation today. And 7% are not planning to or intend to read it, which is, again, totally fine. I really encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about the white paper, to visit our website. We have the link and access to the white paper here. Okay, so before we dive in, we are part of the SAFER program within the State Water Board, and SAFER has a very unique funding called Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund. So that fund allocates $130 million per year up to 2030. The fund expenditure plan prioritizes funding to projects and systems based on data drawn from the needs assessment. And here we come into play. So our unit conducts the needs assessment annually that has 4 core components. First of all, identifying failing water systems, and this is for community water systems in K-12 schools. Then conducting the risk assessment to identify any at-risk systems of failing. This is for small and medium community water systems. We also do it for state small water systems and domestic wells. So identifying failing and at-risk systems really helps us to kind of focus our outreach effort. Then we have the cost assessment piece. So the cost assessment, in fact, it kind of estimates, it's the price tag to estimate the interim and long-term solutions to bring the failing systems to compliance, also to help at-risk water systems. So cost assessment is being conducted for all failing and at-risk public water systems. Also, it's done for domestic wells and state small water systems. Then we have the last piece, which is the affordability assessment. So in the affordability assessment, we assess the number of systems where they struggle to implement these solutions because they can't afford it. And today's focus is on the cost assessment piece. So again, to reiterate, the purpose of the cost assessment, Senate Bill 200 passed to direct the State Water Board to estimate the anticipated funding needs to implement and channel long-term solutions for failing and at-risk public water systems. So I want to emphasize that the results of the cost assessment are not used to inform any local decision makings. It's only used to prioritize existing SAFER fund. So I want to talk about what systems are included in the cost assessment. Failing public water systems. So when the 2021 cost assessment model was released, we only had systems failing for primary and secondary MCL violations. But not too long ago, we expanded the criteria to include systems failing for E. coli violations, treatment technique violations, and monitoring and reporting violations. So since we expanded the criteria, we are including these systems and assessing them in the cost model. Then at-risk public water systems are also included. And at-risk can be for water quality risk, accessibility risk, affordability, also for any technical, managerial, or financial risk. At-risk state small water systems and domestic wells, they're also assessed in the cost model. They are regulated by counties, but we assess them in the cost model. So when the 2021 model was released, state smalls and domestic wells were only identified at risk due to water quality. But based on feedback and after we developed and enhanced our risk assessment and methodology for state smalls and domestic wells, we expanded the risk identification to include state smalls and domestic wells that are not only at risk of water quality, but also at water shortage and socioeconomic risk. So in summary, we are including all of these systems in the cost model assessment. So just to give you an overview of the proposed changes, I want to emphasize that this is not the first workshop that we are hosting. It's been a very intensive public-driven process. We've been engaged with public since 2019. We've hosted many public workshops, webinars, and we are really seeking your feedback and constructive feedback. If that topic interests you, I would really encourage you to check our website. In our website, we have links for the old model. So the 2021 report, you can find it here. You can also find access to the 2021 paper and many other topics. You can find it in our website. So before we dive and talk about what are the proposed changes, I would like to walk you through what was being conducted in the 2021 cost assessment model. And what was the selection process for the treatment or the modeled solution for the systems? So the 2021 cost model was a bit complicated, and our team tried to simplify and streamline it. So what was actually happening there is step number one, the model would be looking at multiple solutions, so costing out many solutions for the same system at the same time. So we would be looking, for example, at decentralized treatment, and also physical consolidation. Then something called sustainability and resiliency was being conducted to compare and only choose 2 solutions out of the many that were assessed initially. Then only 1 solution was being selected. So that was okay as an initial step. It's very similar to something called an alternative or an option analysis. But what that actually led to is over-selecting POE over physical consolidation. And we have to admit that, POE is not a very sustainable long-term solution, and it does not align with our, mission and also program priority. So we try to simplify and streamline the process by first and foremost identifying if physical consolidation is viable. So we would assess physical consolidation first and determine if systems are viable for that. If not, then we would be assessing if centralized treatment or decentralized treatment are an option. I want to remind you folks that we hosted on July 14th our first workshop to talk about physical consolidation. So the first workshop to discuss the cost model rebuild. If you are interested in the topic, I would encourage you again to check our website. We have the link to the white paper, to the webinar presentation, and to the recording. So since the physical consolidation model results kind of inform and feed into the long-term model treatment, I would like to walk you through the steps or how the process was being conducted in physical consolidation. So the first step was to identify who's receiving and who's joining systems. And upfront, if any of the systems don't meet the criteria, then physical consolidation is excluded, and then we would seek alternative long-term solutions. And step number 2, we take those systems that meet the criteria, and then we conduct GIS analysis applying distance criteria. And if any of the distances are not met or exceeded, then again, physical consolidation is not considered viable. So after we apply the distance criteria, we calculate the capital cost, applying all the assumptions and the quotes that we got, and then determine the cost per system. After that, we compare the cost per each system with the funding viability thresholds that we developed internally in collaboration with our Division of Financial Assistance. If the cost exceeds the funding viability thresholds, then again, physical consolidation is not considered viable. But when consolidation is viable, that means meeting the distance criteria and the funding viability thresholds, then we would move to step number 5. So in step number 5, we try to make a system more sustainable by accounting for any add-on costs. So for example, any infrastructure improvements or needs. And today's focus in our webinar is to look at when physical consolidation is not viable, what are the alternative long-term solutions? Okay, just to reiterate, after conducting step number 1 and determining when physical consolidation is not viable, then we would be moving to step 2 and 3, and today's webinar focus would be on these 2 steps. So before we get into further details, I would like to launch my third poll question. So do you support the proposed modification to the cost assessment model? Yes, they sound good. Maybe, no, I don't. I think they're headed in the wrong direction, or you're just neutral. I'll give you guys a few seconds and then I'll end the poll. Okay, ending the poll now. Showing results. Okay, so looks like we have 62% said maybe I need to learn more, which is totally fine. We will walk you through our slides and you will be able to have better understanding. Looks like 31% are neutral and 8% they think that they sound good. And very good news, we have 0% that said it's headed in the wrong direction. Stop sharing. Okay, so we kind of gave you a good background on the consolidation, on the proposed updates. Now we will talk about the proposed long-term treatment analysis. So similar to the process that you've seen for physical consolidation, I'll walk you through similar process for the long-term treatment. So how the treatment is applied per each system. So step number 1 is to know what systems are included in the analysis. That's the most important part. Then we would look at the problems and the issues that the system is facing, like for example, what's their failing analyte, and then try to match the modeled treatment technologies depending on the failing analyte. Then we would be calculating the infrastructure capital cost for that specific treatment plant. Then we would move to calculate the ongoing O&M costs associated with that specific treatment plant. Finally, we would wrap it up by adding any additional infrastructure, technical assistance, or administration costs. Some systems are not assessed for modeled long-term treatment, so they go straight from step 1 to step number 5. And those systems can be any at-risk, public water systems. They're not assessed for modeled long-term treatment. So that was, the steps altogether. Me and my other 2 colleagues will walk you through in depth, step by step. So again, step number 1 is about identifying the systems to be included in the long-term modeled analysis. So first of all, we would look at the failing water systems. So we start by looking at the failing public water systems. Then I can't emphasize this enough. We conduct physical consolidation analysis. And then when physical consolidation is not viable, then we would run steps 1 through 4. And then wrap it up again with step number 5 to increase the system sustainability. Things I want to emphasize. So after conducting the physical consolidation analysis, 2 types of systems are excluded. So any joining system where physical consolidation was viable will be excluded because we assume that this system is no longer existing and it was subsumed. And also we exclude any failing system that's failing for monitoring and reporting violation from the long-term model treatment. We have some systems that are failing and receiving systems are being included, and those would be the systems that are failing for water quality issues. So the table that you see here kind of compares the failing criteria between the old and the recommended update. I've already mentioned that early on, but as you can see here, since we expanded the failing criteria, our recommended model now is including not only systems failing for primary and secondary violations, but we are also including systems failing for E. coli and treatment technique violations. Our system is only excluding systems failing for monitoring and reporting violations from the model long-term treatment because their failing criteria is not tied to any exceedances of any water quality. So the table that you see here represents the number of failing systems where physical consolidation is not viable. So we, to develop this number, we utilized an older version of the failing list. And of course, when we will, run the model, we will update the list. But basically, we used an older version of the failing list at that time, and then we run the physical consolidation 1 time using the old model and 1 time using the old model criteria, and 1 time using the recommended updated criteria. So the estimated number of systems that you see here represents the number of systems where physical consolidation was not viable, meaning those systems will be potentially assessed for long-term model treatment. So following our recommended update, you see 200 systems will be assessed for long-term model treatment compared to 195. So our number is slightly higher than the estimated number of systems following the old model criteria. So this table represents the counts of systems that will be assessed for modeled treatment when consolidation is not viable. So I already mentioned that above early on. When consolidation involves a joining system and consolidation is viable for that, we will not be assessing it for long-term model treatment. So it's excluded across the old model and the recommended model. However, in our recommended update, we are proposing to include failing receiving systems due to water quality violations in the long-term model treatment. And we have only more than a handful of these systems, around 14 unique water systems, that will be assessed for long-term model treatment. So we talked about failing water systems included in the treatment. Now we'll talk about state smalls and domestic wells. So we would start by looking at state small water systems and domestic wells with a high water quality and or water shortage risk. Then we would conduct physical consolidation analysis. When consolidation is not viable and the state small and the domestic well are at high risk of water quality, then we would assess them through steps 1 through 4. Then we would be wrapping them up with step number 5 to account for any interim and or long-term solutions. When consolidation is not viable, but the state small or domestic well are at high risk of water shortage, we will not be assessing them for long-term model treatment. Instead, we would go to step number 5, where we assess other potential solutions, like, for example, new well. So the table here summarizes, similar to failing public water systems, some quick counts of state smalls and domestic wells that are at high risk of water quality, that are assessed, will be potentially assessed for a long-term treatment. So you see here, we start with around 700 state smalls and almost 100,000 domestic wells. In our recommended update, we have a slightly lower number of state smalls being assessed because more of them are consolidating now following our recommended update. And we have 43,651 domestic wells will be assessed for long-term model treatment. Okay, so that kind of concludes my initial part. I would, suggest a break of 5 minutes, and then we can resume after that. Thank you. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Let's resume. So I will hand things over to He from our unit. She will walk you through steps number 2 and 3. He, why don't you introduce yourself, and I will be advancing the slides for you.
Great, thank you, Moj. So good morning, everyone. My name is Hee-kyung Lim. I'm working for the Needs Analysis Unit in the Division of Drinking Water. Today, my presentation will cover step 2 and step 3 of a modeled long-term treatment analysis. So step 2 is matching system challenges to modeled treatment technologies. There are 2 different types of modeled treatment: centralized and decentralized treatment. In centralized drinking water treatment, a water system extracts water from one or more sources and treats the water before conveying through a distribution system. When centralized treatment is not feasible, decentralized treatment such as point of use and point of entry devices are installed at individual homes or businesses. There is a substantial change made on the water system size threshold to select decentralized treatment in the model. In the 2021 model, it was 200 service connections. This means any failing water systems up to 200 service connections will automatically match to point of use or point of entry treatment as a long-term solution. We realized that about 80% of failing water systems are small size, under 200 service connections. So the 200 service connection threshold triggered over-selecting of decentralized treatment in the 2021 model. The proposed updated model lowers the threshold to 20 service connections to improve the model, and also considering that decentralized treatment may not be sustainable in the long term. In the next few slides, I'm going to provide more details on long-term centralized and decentralized treatment technologies included in the model. So this slide and the next couple of slides will focus on long-term centralized treatment technologies. As summarized in this table, the model is designed to select one treatment technology suitable for treating each contaminant as a failing water system meets specific criteria. So before diving in, we recognize that there are some other treatment technologies that could be added to this table, but the Water Board's internal work group, consisting of Division of Drinking Water Engineers and Treatment Specialists and Division of Financial Assistance staff, selected these technologies based on knowledge on typical small water systems capability or capacity. So what we have in the model tends to be the ones with potentially lower capital cost and O&M cost. So if you look at this table, in the far left column of the table, these are the menu of the treatment technologies. In the middle column, contaminants that can be treated by each treatment technology. The last column represents the threshold criteria that each failing water system should meet for matching the designated treatment technology. So for example, granular activated carbon, usually abbreviated to GAC, will be selected for treating volatile organic compounds such as dibromo, chloropropane, ethylene dibromide, 1,2,3-TCP, 1,1-dichloroethylene, and disinfection byproducts for failing water systems with less than 20 service connections. So I'm not going to go over every single one in this table, but I want to highlight adsorption and coagulation filtration in the treatment technologies menu. Both technologies can be used for arsenic treatment, but the model will match only one of these, depending on system size and arsenic concentration in raw water, as summarized in the last column. So adsorption will be selected for systems with the service connections between 20 and 500, and with the arsenic influent concentration less than 50 micron per liter. On the other hand, coagulation filtration will be selected for systems with greater 500 service connections or greater, and for arsenic influent concentration, 50 micron per liter or greater. In the model, we select regenerable resin anion exchange for nitrate treatment with a few threshold criteria associated with the system size and nitrate influent concentration and sulfate concentration as well in raw water. Regenerable resin cation exchange, this technology is a new addition to the updated model for radium-226 and radium-228 treatment for failing water systems with the service connection 20 or greater. So as you have seen, the 20 service connection threshold is generally applied across most treatment technologies in this table, except for these two: full log virus treatment and surface water treatment package plan. So both can be used for treating fecal contaminants. Full log virus treatment is for groundwater sources, and surface water treatment package plan is for surface water sources. Since California drinking water regulation doesn't allow point-of-use treatment for microbial contaminants, there is no system size threshold associated with these two treatment technologies. So that was about centralized treatment technologies. And now let's look at decentralized treatment technologies and their matching criteria included in the model. As said, the model will select decentralized treatment when centralized treatment is not feasible. In the model, point-of-use treatment is selected for inorganic contaminants and uranium. There is a restriction for nitrate concentration, which should be less than 25 milligrams per liter. So applying the same regulatory restriction here as explained in earlier slide, point-of-use treatment is not used for microbial contaminants in the model. Point-of-entry treatment is selected for treating volatile organic compounds for failing systems with less than 20 service connections. So here we have some sophisticated instances where a failing water system has water quality violations for multiple contaminants within one source. So in that case, the cost assessment model employs a set of decision-making criteria to determine the best modeled treatment technology to address co-occurring contaminants. So in this table summarizes the decision criteria and set of co-contaminant combination frequently occurring corresponding to each criterion. Again, I'm not going to go over all the details in this table, but in essence, when co-occurring contaminants can be treated with the same treatment technology, the cost of a single treatment will be selected. For some instances, we may need to select the cost with the highest annual O&M cost estimate. And for some other instances, we may need to combine the cost of multiple treatment technologies depending on co-occurring contaminants combination. The last one is a unique example when arsenic is co-occurring with the iron or manganese. In this case, coagulation filtration is chosen in the model due to arsenic treatment. So we have documented more details on individual model treatment technologies in the white paper. So if you are interested in learning more, please refer to Appendix B and Appendix C in the white paper. We are also looking forward to your feedback. So now moving on to step 3. So step 3 is calculating modeled long-term treatment capital cost estimate. To rebuild the cost model, we needed to look at individual cost components for the capital cost estimate and compare them to the 2021 model to either validate or update underlying assumptions. We have conducted extensive internal, external outreaches as listed out here. So we did a thorough review of documentation from the 2021 cost assessment model. We also reviewed US EPA's work breakdown structure models to find cost data. We consulted with many of vendors, manufacturers, and consulting firms to get their insight. And we also reviewed the State Water Board funded project to find additional cost estimate data. And we reached out to water system to sometimes collect cost data and sometimes validate the cost data we have. Last but not least, can you go back to, yeah, thank you. So last but not least, we consulted many times with an internal work group of the Division of Drinking Water Engineers and Division of Financial Assistance staff. So this slides to summarize the processes in the model for developing capital cost assumptions for each modeled treatment technology. The model estimates maximum daily demand for each system to properly size the modeled treatment technology. So, and then utilizing the maximum daily demand calculated from step 1, the model develops capital cost estimate for water systems. And then as the final step, multipliers are used to convert the capital cost estimate to installed capital cost and adjust the output to current market prices. So estimating water demand helps the model properly size the treatment. Our model estimates the maximum daily demand utilizing this formula with a few assumptions listed here. 2.25 for peaking factor and 150 gallons per person per day for average daily demand. And we assume the operating 16 hours per day. So these assumptions are embedded, these 3 assumptions are embedded in this formula. So we recognize there are methodologies and formula prescribed in the California Drinking Water Regulation. However, due to mainly data availability and data accuracy issues, we wanted to use a standard engineering approach as this formula. So, and this formula was also embedded in the 2021 model with a different peaking factor applied. This is an example to illustrate how we have summarized and compared the capital cost estimate methodologies between the 2021 model and the updated model. So for an example of GAC capital cost, there are 2 cost components, treatment vessel and booster pump. In the 2021 model, for treatment vessel cost, it was based on multiple quotes from multiple vendors. All the quotes were adjusted to 2021 ENRCCI to reflect the 2021 prices. And the quotes were averaged by vessel size and converted to installed capital cost to applying an engineering multiplier of 2.36. And for the updated model, we recommend continuing to use the 2021 model cost assumptions, just applying current ENRCCI to adjust the cost to current market price. For a booster pump cost estimate, booster pump cost is estimated only for disinfection byproduct treatment. In the 2021 model, a flat cost of $30,000 was applied to all water systems, regardless of their treatment capacity. And the cost was, this flat cost was converted to installed capital cost with an engineering multiplier of 2.36. We recommend developing a regression equation to estimate the cost based on the varying estimated pump capacity. Next slide. Yeah. So this slide shows the capital cost for treatment vessel by flow rate. It compares the dollar amount between the 2021 model and cost estimate cited from a few state water board funded projects and our recommendation for the updated model. So if we compare the cost data from the state water board funded projects to the updated cost estimate, overall the cost data from the state water board funded project are lower than the updated cost estimate. So it is important to note that the cost data from the state water board funded project represent equipment costs with only installation labor and start of service costs added. Other construction related costs or multipliers were not included. So we have looked at GS treatment vessel costs, and now I'll talk about booster pump station cost. As said in the 2021 model, if an estimated flat cost was applied to all water systems, regardless of treatment capacity, as you look at in the second column in this table, this cost is the dollar amount after the 2.36 engineer multiplier was applied. So, sorry, can you go back? In the updated model, we recommend developing a regression equation utilizing the external quotes collected by an engineering firm in 2021. So the quotes were adjusted to the current prices to be used for the regression analysis for the updated model. This is the regression graph based on pump cost data externally quoted and varying on pump capacity. And the equation derived from the regression is being presented on right side. So x-axis being pump capacity and y-axis being pump cost. If you look at this table, it compares the pump cost estimate used in the 2021 model and the pump cost estimated by the regression equation we just developed. As you can see in the last column, the model estimated pump cost is changing as the pump capacity is increasing. And lastly, I'd like to touch on a couple of things, couple of multipliers used in the model to adjust the capital cost, engineering multiplier and ENR construction cost index. So engineering multiplier is applied to the capital cost estimate to convert it to installed capital cost. And this is to account for installation labor, general site work, electrical contingency, and other planning and administrative fees. The ENR construction cost index, abbreviated to CCI, and this is to adjust the install cost to current market prices. So in this table, we summarize these two multipliers along with the technologies that each multiplier is applied to in the model. That completes my portion of the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bansri for the next content.
Thanks, Hee. Am I audible? Can anyone confirm?
Yes, go ahead, Bansri.
Thanks. Thanks, Hee. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bansri Taylor. I'm an engineer at the Needs Analysis Unit. I'll be walking you all through, hopefully, through the step 4 of our proposed updated cost assessment model, which is a long-term treatment O&M cost estimates. In order to enhance O&M costs in the 2021 cost assessment model, we conducted a thorough review of operational and maintenance needs for an efficient treatment. We performed a thorough review of all available resources, similar to the previous step for the capital cost estimates. We compiled and summarized all research together and gathered feedback from expert engineers at the State Water Board. For the detailed in-depth methodology walkthrough, please refer appendices B and C in the white paper. We'd appreciate your feedback on this. So in proposed updated cost assessment model, O&M cost estimates will vary based on the estimated water demand. Well, to estimate the annual water production, unlike maximum daily demand, which is used to estimate water demand for the capital cost, we are using average daily demand. We are assuming that 150 gallons of water per person per day is needed, as mentioned in the equation. There are 4 core components in the proposed O&M estimates, which are consumables, discharge, labor, and electricity. In effort to enhance the 2021 cost assessment model, we are proposing to add cost components within these 4 categories. I'll explain this in the coming slide. In the proposed updated methodology, we are recommending to add costs for chemicals needed for the treatment, such as disinfectants, pH adjusters, coagulants, etc., and part replacements such as filter, resins, absorptive media, etc. Again, for an in-depth overview, we encourage you to refer to O&M cost estimate sections for each treatment technology in the appendices B and C in the white paper. Okay. When compared to the 2021 cost assessment model, we recommend adding and or updating consumables for treatment technologies. Here's an example of one of the treatment technologies for which we have made significant enhancements. The 2021 cost assessment model for the surface water treatment package plant O&M estimates only accounted for labor costs. However, as it can be seen in the table, we are adding costs for coagulant, filter aids, filter replacements, disinfectants, etc. We reached out to multiple vendors, reviewed US EPA's vendor database. We reviewed State Water Board's funded projects and conducted extensive research. We compiled and summarized all the cost information from all these resources to gather our internal work group's feedback to propose these costs. These additions can significantly enhance the modeled O&M cost estimates. When the consumables such as filters and resins are used and saturated with the contaminants, it is necessary to properly handle and discharge them so that the contaminant does not leach back into the drinking water or the environment. Waste discharge costs can also play a significant role in the O&M cost estimates. Why? Let's look into an example. Single-use ion exchange treatment for the uranium, a radioactive contaminant, is a great example to explain the costs associated with the waste discharge. According to our research and feedback from a vendor, the disposal cost of uranium selective resin is double than the resin cost itself, highlighted in the blue color. These high expenses are due to the restrictions and requirements related to its transportation and limited available radioactive waste receiving facilities in the US. For labor, we conducted a thorough market research to update treatment operators' salaries for grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. As summarized in the table, updated proposed 2023 operator salaries for the treatment operator grades 1 and 2 are increased when T3 and T4 has decreased when compared to the 2021 cost assessment model. Expert engineers at the State Water Board validated the proposed costs, and we developed updated 2023 cost estimates for operator salaries. Based on the regulations and feedback collected from our work group, different treatment operator grades are recommended for various treatment technologies. We are not estimating O&M costs for entire facility, but for a particular treatment. Therefore, as summarized in the last column, we are assuming that an operator would spend an assumed amount of time for a particular treatment technology. For example, a T2 level operator would spend around 10% of their time, meaning 10% of their annual salary, towards GAC treatment. For electricity, we are estimating electricity costs by assuming that the power supply is needed to pump the water through the treatment process. Mentioned here is the electricity cost equation, and summarized in the table are the assumptions made through research. We are making assumptions on head loss, electricity, pump, and motor efficiencies. Again, please refer to appendices B and C for in-depth overview, and please let us know if you have any feedback on this. Lastly, we are estimating total O&M costs, including consumables, waste discharge, labor, and electricity for a 20-year net present worth based on the given equations with an interest rate of 4%. We are using 20-year net present worth because 20-year is assumed to be useful life for assets. After that, they need to be replaced or upgraded. It is important to note that the cost assessment model's O&M estimates are not representative of total O&M cost needs to sustainably run a drinking water system. They only represent estimated costs associated with the new model treatment. With that, I conclude my portion and handing things over to Moj. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Bansri and He. That was very informative and helpful. So now that the team walked you through steps 1 through 4, I will wrap it up with step number 5. So in step number 5, it's virtually the last step in the cost assessment model. So in that step, we start to identify any potential needs to enhance the system. So for example, we would be looking at any interim solutions, any infrastructure need improvements, administration, technical assistance, etc., just to make a system more sustainable. So this final step will be further discussed and explored in our future workshop, hopefully around December 2023. So that concludes our conversation and presentation for the proposed changes. I will open it for discussion. So our discussion topic 1 is to ask about and just get your feedback about the proposed changes to the long-term treatment analysis in the cost model. So the first question is, do you agree with the proposed methodology for estimating long-term treatment needs in the cost model? And then second, do you have any suggestions or feedback on the updates to the treatment technology capital and or O&M cost assumptions based on what we presented to you today? You can raise your hand, or if you don't feel like it, please put your question or comment in the Q&A box. Let's give you guys a few minutes. to absorb and think about it. Okay, giving 1 more minute.
Hey Moj, we have someone who recommends that we consult with more water systems for our modeling, and we would love that. We've reached out to a lot of our water systems to try to validate some of our models' assumptions and outputs. So if anyone has suggestions on water systems we can more thoroughly engage with, we appreciate it. Thank you, Ophelia. Appreciate your nice comment. Okay, Moj, I don't see any other I don't see hands or questions. Maybe remind folks about the white paper. We are looking for some specific feedback there.
Okay, so headed to, I think we have another question.
Oh, yep, we got one. Rob says, great session. Happy to see the inclusion of data from recent projects, and thinks that what we've included is prudent. When are we expected to implement this, Moj?
So we are actually in the process of rebuilding our cost assessment model, and we appreciate any, data that you guys can provide to us. And we are, doing a lot of internal and external outreach. Hopefully we will include it in the next iteration when we do like a preliminary cost estimates. If that answers your question.
So I think for when, the answer is we are hoping to do a preliminary estimate for our December workshop, which would be using kind of older data. But for the final model output, we're gonna run it for the 2024 needs assessment, which is typically released in the springtime each year. So look for the final results of the model in usually March or April 2024. Okay, Shannon is asking, have you worked with private water companies?
We did a lot of outreach to water companies. We tried to engage with many as possible.
But we're always open to more, Shannon. So we did run into issues. Some private water utilities that we reached out to, water systems, sometimes just didn't have the time to dig into their files to get back to us. And then we did reach out to a lot of different vendors, manufacturers, and even other consulting firms. We had a lot who did help us, but then we did get, I would say 2/3 of the responses were, they didn't want to share anything with us that could be used publicly, and declined working with us. So again, we host these workshops and webinars because we're looking for feedback. We're looking for additional data information that we can use to enhance the model's estimates and assumptions. So feel free to share with us any information you have if you want to dig in with us on any of our models criteria. Let's see. Sealy, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, says it is hard to know for sure if the proposed changes work without knowing which systems are included in the model. Is it internally or publicly available? Our list of failing and at-risk systems has been public from the very beginning in 2021 when we released our first needs assessment. All of that is on our webpage. If you go to our Safer dashboard, that is a live list of all of our failing and at-risk water systems. The failing list is refreshed daily. So that has always been public. If you are interested to know the list of systems that may go through the model in 2024, that's a good place to start. Steph is asking for the slides in the white paper. yes, if anyone has registered for the event through Zoom, we emailed a hyperlink to the white paper about 15 minutes before the webinar, but we are going to send out the slides to everyone right after this. Again, those who registered through Zoom only. We are remediating the PowerPoint slides now for accessibility and should be posted hopefully, if not this week, early next week. And then we have someone asking if we can explain what physical consolidation is and some examples. Moj, can you explain what physical consolidation is?
I'll try. So in simple words, physical consolidation is when a large receiving water system subsumes a smaller joining system, or like a smaller domestic well. So the smaller system in the model no longer exists because it's going to be receiving the water from the larger receiving system. So basically the smaller system dissolves into the larger system to receive, like the larger system will provide water not to their customers only, but to the smaller system customers as well. Just in simple words. I hope I explained it well from the model perspective.
They would be physically connected in the model and therefore no longer serving their customers. Hopefully that answers your question. It was submitted by an anonymous attendee.
Okay, I don't see any more questions for topic 1. Let's just talk about the second discussion topic. Just, general questions or feedback that you have on the cost assessment model. Very open-ended discussion. Again, we really appreciate any public feedback and any constructive comments that we receive. It's really helping us to rebuild and rethink our assumptions and criteria. Okay, I don't see any questions. Giving a few more seconds. Oh, I see a question.
We have a question that's asking, how likely is available funding to align with the cost estimates? Very unlikely. So if you take a look at our 2021 cost model results, I think the price tag that was estimated was above $10 billion. It was a very large number over multiple years. And of course, the funding that we have at the state is significantly less than that. And so what our model results illustrate is that there's a pretty large funding gap between what we believe may be needed to help make communities more sustainable so that they can have safe, accessible drinking water. And so our results are used oftentimes to illustrate the need for additional funding. But it also then stresses how important it is that the State Water Board and other agencies that do have water infrastructure funding to make sure that they're really prioritizing correctly where those limited resources are directed across the state. We want to make sure that communities in most need are able to get funding. So it's a great question, and it's one of the reasons why we do our analysis, is to illustrate that there is not enough funding to go around. Another one is RO, reverse osmosis, not viable even when multiple contaminants need to be addressed, as opposed to multiple treatment methods to address the multiple contaminants?
I'll try answering this question. So I guess from our team, she discussed early on that there are many other treatments that are available out there, but our team in consultation with our internal work group tried to only list the treatment technologies that would best fit small water systems, small failing water systems, where it's more, easy to like run and also less costly. So RO might work to remove multiple contaminants, but it was not considered in our model. But please, if you have any data that you want to share or anything that will help us to, think about RO, please don't hesitate to share it with us.
Is there anyone else on the team who wanted to weigh in on that question? Thanks, Moj.
Okay. I don't see any other questions.
Moj, I think we should again just emphasize that because our model is only assessing potential solutions for our failing water systems and our at-risk state smalls and domestic wells, we are trying to really ensure that the model is tailored for our smaller water systems. Like we said, over 80% of our failing water systems have less than 200 connections. And when you look at the data, it's even more biased towards the even smaller connection range, which means that these systems, these communities really have very limited capacity to both afford and operate larger or more sophisticated treatment technologies. So we did try to really make sure that the included treatment technologies are tailored to small water systems. Anything more complex would probably be infeasible in reality, which is why we're trying to limit it down. But if people disagree with that, we want to hear your thoughts. It's important for us to reconsider old and new assumptions. So feel free to poke holes in what we're proposing here.
Well said. Thank you, Kristen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't see further questions. I'll just move along. Okay. Again, and always, we really appreciate your feedback. Please follow the link to access the white paper. Public feedback is due by November 6, 2023. Okay, so just to talk about near future, we will be hosting our next workshop on December 2023 to talk about step number 5, which is again talking about any additional infrastructure needs, TA, admin, and any interim solutions. So just stay tuned. I don't see any other questions in the queue. Oh, we have one. Okay. No, thank you. Okay. I can just, hang on for a minute or two just to see if there is any question that pops in the chat box. Other than that, we really appreciate your feedback and participation, and we really look forward to any feedback that you provide on the white paper and our assumptions. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat box. Again, thank you everybody for your participation, and we look forward to see you in our next webinar. Thank you.